Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace and greetings and blessings to everyone. We have a great gathering today. You see on my left side Hajj Dr. Nassib Fawaz, and then Brother Ran Amin, and on my right side Hajj Adnan Chirri, the living legacy of our Imam, late Imam Muhammad Jawad Chirri, Allah yarhamah. We had last week a conversation with a member, an old member of Islamic Center of America, of Hajj Ali Faiz, and we went through some discussion related to the community, struggles of the community, the establishment of Islamic Center, and even before Islamic Center, the Hashemi Hall, they called it, and then the struggles that the community went through, how they established Islamic Center, and the sacrifice, the determination, the discipline that they had to demonstrate through years to give direction and guidance to the community and take the community to where we are now as a known community, Muslim community, Arab American community, Lebanese American community, and we are so blessed that we still have some of those great people who contributed to our faith, to our identity, to our families, to our religious organizations, and especially Islamic Center as the first Islamic institution. We are blessed to have some of them still with us. I mentioned in that conversation that when I arrived in Detroit in 1992, and I arrived at the airport in Detroit, 4 people were there. They welcomed me. It was Hajj Hussein Maqlid, Hajj Hussein Hamoud, Hajj Chak Alawan, and Hajj Ali Naji. That they took me to Hajj Ali Naji's house in Dearborn. So now in 28 years from that time, unfortunately none of those 4 people are alive anymore. All of them are with the Lord, and we honor their memory, we pray for their soul and for their sacrifice. And we thought at the Islamic House of Wisdom to have this conversation with great contributors to our community, Hajj Nassib, Brother Ran, and Hajj Adnan, and share some of the memories that they may have from the time of establishment of Islamic Center of America or after that, or other institutions. We have the Islamic Institute of Knowledge that Samatu Sheikh Abdul Latif Berry, he came after Imam Chirri, and he also had a big role in educating our community and serving our community, and we pray for his health as well. He is not functioning anymore as he used to, but we need to appreciate, I mean, the culture of appreciation and gratitude should be part of our culture. And honestly, the purpose of calling these brothers, these members of our community, leaders of our community, members of our religious organizations, the purpose is to show appreciation for what these people did for us, and made things ready. When I came here, already we had a center, already we had a congregation, we already had a board. And so I didn't have to go through the sufferings, through the pains and preparation that like 60 years ago, some of you Ikhwan, they had to go through. For that reason, I hope that when we air this conversation, we see appreciation from especially the younger ones in our community, especially from new generation. They show appreciation for people who served, who sacrificed, who contributed then and even now. I mean, we know like somebody like Ustad Hajj Nassib Fawaz, still with his age, mashallah, still he's young, and with his leadership, whether in the community, recently he was in Lebanon, and after that explosion in Lebanon, he had a great positive role of being part of solution, part of healing, looking at people who suffered because of explosion or people who were poor even before that. And he did his best to help those people. And I see Brother Ran, Hajj Adnan, other Ikhwan, they are really part of engagement in our community, outreach in our community. They contributed with their time, with their talent, with their treasure. I know both Brother Ran was a chairman for a while at the center. Hajj Adnan chaired the board of Islamic Center for a while. And we are one, Islamic Center, Islamic House of Wisdom, other Islamic centers in the community. We are gone with from the time that, you know, we were in different time and different situation. At this time, observing what is going on. Recently you watched like the presidential debate. You saw what was going on. When we are going through so much mess and chaos and confusion and contradiction in the country, in the world in general, it is really time for us as Muslim community to stand for peace, to stand for love, to stand for justice, to be part of healing, to be part of harmony. And in order to do that, we need to be one family. The community in Dearborn Heights, in our neighboring city, Muslim community, Arab community, we should speak as one family with the same values and share this light and this appreciation with other communities, with other neighbors, and lead by example. Example of unity, example of appreciation and outreach. So I, sorry if it was a little bit long, this introduction, but I like to start from Hajj Nassib Fawaz to Hajj Nassib. We know you and we love you, but for this record, you know, you don't know the audience. It's going to be all over the world, and not only on Sunday, but in the future, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, people may watch this, and it is good that your inspiration, your wisdom, your leadership, share something about your life, your story, or your contribution, your experience, in any period that you would like to.
Thank you, Imam Elahi. Thank you for the opportunity to talk and to meet with my brothers. We haven't had a lot of time with this corona situation to see Adnan, Chirri, and see my brother. I was away for about a month and a half, maybe 2 months in Lebanon, and I just came back, and I left the situation pretty bad out there. We wish them a lot of luck. There was a lot of problems after the explosions took place, and thanks for the donations that provided was given to the poor and needy, and for people who needed food, and a lot of them really couldn't buy meat. So that was an opportunity for them to have some meat as well. So we gave what we gave. We also, to answer some of the questions, I created an organization. They call it Beiti Beitek, my home is your home. And it's a young group of doctors and individuals who set up tents in near Ashrafiyah by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then they match people who has homes. They are willing to donate, give their time in their homes, and people who need homes. So we created like 200 homes and more for people who needed a home, people who are offering homes. So there was not only food and money, but assistance for people who need assistance. So that was a good thing, and a lot of people work with me, and I thank God I was able to do small part in this. Now, as far as back as the community, there's so much to talk about. I'm 83 years old now. I came to this country when I was 17, and I started at the Al-Arabi Nadi Al-Arabi Al-Hashimi. All of you remember that Nadi, and it was consist of 2 levels. Small level at the bottom. Now when I look at it, I thought it was big, but really it's a very small place. And then up there, we used to go with Imam Chirri to pray. Before him, there was Sheikh Khalil Bazzi used to pray there. And I remember for sure, Imam Chirri walks in with blueprints under his arm, and he spread it, and he tells us every weekend, this is the Ned Al-Arabi Al-Hashimi, the place I want you to have. This is what we want you to have. And he has the blueprint and the drawing of the Islamic Center on Joe Road. So we all were excited. We all were happy that we got someone who knows Islam. He can teach us Islam that we can follow. The community at that time was small. Maybe in Dearborn about 10,000 people, less or more. Few people in Highland Park as well. And all they do was to wait for a weekend. You probably remember this. And Sunday they go to Camp Dearborn. They have Lahm Mishwi and they have Dirbeki, and this is the fun that we have. And there was nothing has to do with religion, nothing to do with education, nothing to do with creating the future. A few of us who got a little wiser and followed Imam Chirri and worked, we found out that we really need to do something for the community. So that was, the Islamic Center wasn't only a structure, was bringing the people together. It was creating a university that helped us to work together and to guide our children and to guide our future. So we encourage people to be educated. We encourage people to open up and speak up. We encourage people to become helping each other, assisting each other as a community. Before, it didn't matter. Well, today you can see the community is different. The days we went through was very rough. It was time where you didn't have much. We had very little. I remember that Marhum, Allah Yishfi, Al-Hajj, Subhi Abdul Satir, and myself, we thought we did a great thing by donating the sound system to the Islamic Center on Joy Road. And Imam Chirri asked us to lead the youth. We created the first youth organization. It was something huge for us, big, a lot of responsibility. We're looking for youth. Well, today, our community is full of youth. Educators, lawyers, doctors, professionals. We need to have these people to know how hard we work to create a community at this level. So these are the things that we need to let our younger generation know, that this community didn't develop from nothing. There are people who sacrifice their time, sacrifice their money. Some of them, they even sacrifice their homes. They work very hard, their time. And we spend so much time. hours and hours and hours working together and working with the community to develop the Islamic Center of America, to keep the Islamic Center of America alive as a independent institution, an institution that serves the community, that belongs to the community. That was our objective. The second objective was to bring our community to be politically active. It was a difficult situation. I have worked with a lot of people who were active in this issue. We signed people to vote. They have to register to vote, to help them vote, to tell them what to vote. And then later on, they developed other organizations like APAC and MPAC and whatever it is to help the people to know where to vote. That was an important issue, it happening. I established the American Arab Chamber of Commerce. It's still active until now. It's one of the most active organizations for business in the Arab American community, maybe, I would say maybe throughout the United States. It was very active. I was the chairman for 10 years, and I truly spent a lot of time, a lot of my money in that organization. Thank God it's still alive. So that was what we were doing, establishing organizations and helping people and helping our community. We still do that. There's so much to be done. Someone should write a book about all this and get the community, get a history of the community, how we developed from nothing, from an area we lived on Dix Avenue, and it was only few people active. It was your family, Ron, your mother, your family. It was Imam Chirri, your dad. It was people Hajj, I remember Ali Fawaz. It was people who worked very hard to bring this community together. So this, I can say this for now, that we're happy we have a community of this level. And yesterday I was talking to Senator Peter, and he wants our help. I remember a time when we give money to senators and congressmen, they return it. They didn't want it because this is Arab money. Today they look after us. They want our votes, they want our money. So we came a long way. I'll have something else to say there, but I'll stop right here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hajj Nassib, Dr. Nassib. And now we have Brother Ron and Hajj Adnan, whoever want to follow.
Well, I guess I'll go back a little farther. Even though Hajj Nassib Tawal Amro has a few years on me.
You were born here, right?
I was born in the south end of Dearborn.
I see, right.
You know, and people may ask, why Dearborn? Why did the Arabs eventually make Dearborn the hotbed of Arab and Islam in America?
Ford Motor Company.
And it was, as the Hajj said, the main magnet that drew us was the Ford Motor Company. In 1921, Henry Ford opened up the Ford Rouge plant, which was at that time, and actually still is, the largest fenced-in industrial complex in the world. It's not, all of that land is not utilized now. When I was a kid growing up in the South End, there were probably 100,000 people employed at the Rouge. Now there's probably 6,000 or 7,000. But that's what drew us and lots of other immigrants, actually. Henry Ford was paying a lot of money at the time, which was $5 a day. That was a lot of money back in the early 20s. And people literally, you know, broke their necks to get here and to get a job. And a lot of our people did. Because they didn't have driver's licenses, they couldn't afford cars, they settled in the South End. And if you go back into the mid-20s, early 30s, those Arabs, those Muslims that lived in Dearborn lived in the South End. The population of Dearborn at that time was probably about 75,000, and the Arab and Muslim population in the South End of Dearborn was probably less than 1,000. The population of Dearborn today is about 102 or 3,000. We'll see what happens at the next census, but we now make up more than 40% of the city. More than half of the city council are Arab Americans. The mayor now in Dearborn, the rumor is he's not gonna run again, and chances are very good that the next mayor will be an Arab. And probably a Lebanese, because the Lebanese are the dominant ethnic group in the city, closely followed by the Iraqis. At one time it was the Palestinians. But I think number-wise, the Iraqis are probably number 2 in Dearborn. And there's a growing Yemeni population, certainly. They're probably, number-wise, they're probably in 3rd place. But their numbers are growing. Back in about 1975, as our community started growing in the South End, and I say growing, we had left the Hashmi Hall, built the mosque on Joy Road, 1962. People started slowly moving out of the South End. They could afford the more expensive housing in East Dearborn. But there was still a sizable, and when I say sizable, I'm saying at that time maybe 4,000 or 5,000 of the South End were Arabs, and mostly Muslims, a lot of that were not Muslims. But the mayor at the time was Orville Hubbard. Orville Hubbard was a renowned racist. He was known throughout the country. And he ran Dearborn with a literal iron fist. He used to have this slogan on all of the vehicles and all of the literature that the city handed out was "Keep Dearborn Clean."
I remember that.
And most people, how could you argue with, keep your city clean? Well, to the mayor, it had two meanings. Certainly. Keep the city clean, sweep your own. His favorite saying was, if you sweep your own doorstep, everybody sweeps their own doorstep, the entire world will be clean. He was also referring to races when he said keep Dearborn clean. And he meant certainly, because that part of Dearborn, a lot of Dearborn borders Detroit. He was certainly talking about African Americans, keeping them out of the city. And next on his hit list was the growing Arab population in Dearborn. And some will argue, but his opinion of Arabs didn't rank us much higher than what he thought about African Americans. So he started an effort to remove that large segment of the population, Arab Americans, that still lived in the South End, to move them out of there. And he did it by declaring the South End of Dearborn an industrial zone. And his plan was to clear all of those. Now we're talking 7,000 or 8,000 population-wise in that little corner of the city. Clear all of those people out, demolish all of those homes, and invite small plants, tool and die factories, small parts producers that would service the Rouge. The problem was his method of doing it. And this is what he did. He actually redlined, and when I say redlined, he drew a red line on the map that cut off the South End from the rest of the city. If you lived in the South End at that time and wanted to sell your house, you had to get a permit from the city. And in order to sell your house had to be up to code. Well, he quit issuing permits. So if your house, let's say, needed a new roof, you couldn't get a permit to do it. And what he would do then is he would send a representative to the homeowner and tell them, listen, you can't get a permit, you wanna sell the house, the city will buy the house. And we're gonna offer you this amount of money, which was most of the time well below the actual market value of the home. And in order to coerce the homeowner into selling them, they would say, you see that house that we just bought back behind you on the other street? In 6 months, that house is gonna be demolished and there's gonna be a tool and die shop there. Now, what do you think your house is gonna be worth when there's a tool and die shop almost in your backyard? So the $10,000 we're offering you now, in 6 months, we won't be offering you that money. And in that process, he managed to buy and demolish almost 600 homes. That was a lot of homes for that section of the city.
Wow.
And what stopped him finally was a lawsuit filed by residents of the South End. That lawsuit was filed in the federal court, and it was Catherine Amon et al. And others versus the city of Dearborn. Catherine Amon was my mother.
Wow.
I remember that.
Yep. That lawsuit was filed in the federal district court in the city of Detroit in front of a Jewish judge, as a matter of fact. The judge actually ruled against the city. And what he said is, you have to go and find all of those people that you literally cheated out of their homes and make them whole. And by making them whole is you have to pay them the difference between what they got from the city and what the fair market value was, plus 6% interest on every dollar.
Wow.
Good.
Amazing. Wow.
Well, of course, Orville Hubbard wasn't gonna sit for that, so they appealed that judge's ruling to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals upheld the lower court, basically saying to the city, you gotta obey what the lower court said. The city appealed it to the United States Supreme Court. Now these court transactions went on for almost 11 years. You know, the courts in this country are generally just, but they move awfully slow. When it went to the United States Supreme Court, it took 2 years for the Supreme Court to decide that they were not going to hear the case.
Really?
And when the Supreme Court refuses to hear a case, it means it goes back to the court that issued the initial judgment, and you are bound by that initial judgment.
So that's what happened?
So that's what happened. City had to stop scaring people out of their homes and chasing them out of the South End.
Did they pay the people who took?
And the last time I checked, which was probably about 10 years ago, it had cost the city of Dearborn $27 million, because many of these people had gone back to Europe, had gone back to the Middle East. They had to go find those people. They had to reestablish the value of their house. And in some cases, they had to reestablish what the furnishings of the house were, because the city bought the house furnished. And
Wow. Such a courageous lady. I mean, I knew you are so courageous. Now I know why. Where is the source of it?
Your mother was Catherine Amon.
my mother was Catherine Amon. Yeah. And yeah, my mother came from a line of courageous ladies.
Wow.
That's great.
My grandmother and my great-grandmother.
Not alive?
No,
that's-
none of them are
Yeah,
alive any
God
longer.
bless her soul. Wow.
But my
It's amazing.
great-grandmother was a,
I mean, a lady at that time. What year approximately you are talking about?
the court battle started in 1977.
1977. Wow.
Yeah.
At that age, a lady with that much leadership, it's just amazing.
Yeah, what upset her was, you know, the city came to her house. This was the first house my parents had ever owned. And when they bought the house, they paid $8,000 for it, and that was in 1951. Now the city came to my mom in 1975 and gave her the same spiel about there's gonna be a tool and die shop and.
Now for $8,000, right?
So you better take the $10,000 off you.
Wow, that's amazing.
She says, you see that kitchen table? My mom had a really big kitchen table. He said, yeah, this is the guy from the city. She said, I wouldn't sell you that kitchen table for $10,000. She said, now get out of my house. And they left. And the next time they heard from my mother was
to the court
when she filed suit against the city of Dearborn.
That was the reason recently there was something, the city council, I think, that they were asking to change the name of one of the streets that's in the name of that mayor of the time. I don't know what happened, but there was something on the social media that I.
Yeah, they had erected statues honoring Mayor Hubbard, but you know, with the recent like Black Lives Matter movement and other civil rights movements, the city was pressured to
I think they removed it.
remove that statue.
They did?
They did.
I see. Okay.
First, they put it in the Dearborn Historical Museum, and people didn't settle for that. So the last time I heard is it's actually in the graveyard where the mayor is buried.
Oh, I see. Wow.
And as far as there are,
it's bigger than 6 feet, though, right?
yeah, it is. And there are a couple of streets that are named after the mayor that people are pushing now to rename
Hubbard,
those streets.
Hubbard Drive.
Well, thank you, Sandra.
So my point in that story was that I genuinely feel that had it not been for my mother and other courageous people at that time, the Muslim population of Dearborn would have been scattered helter-skelter. People didn't, at that time, people did not want Arabs moving into East Dearborn. I remember it was probably around 1974, 75. I had moved out of the South End myself and bought a home in East Dearborn. And there were only 2 other Arabs on that entire block.
And I hope, Brother Ron, that our neighbors, non-Muslim neighbors, whether in Dearborn or Dearborn Heights, remember this, that the contribution of Muslim community, Arab community to city, to Dearborn area, whether Dearborn or Dearborn Heights, related to the safety, real estate, progress. I wonder how much they would appreciate that.
Maulana, I got out of the service in 1967. I got a job with the city in the police department, and I was patrolling Warren Avenue. At that time was a literal ghost town. About the only businesses that were doing any kind of business were the bars, and there were 11 bars on Warren Avenue between Wyoming and Greenfield. Those are the 2 borders. That's who was doing the business.
Yeah.
You could buy the biggest, nicest building on Warren Avenue at the time for less than $20,000. I'm talking a storefront and maybe 2 or 3 apartments on the upper level. Go see what you can try and buy one of those buildings.
Yeah, now, right.
You probably couldn't buy 3 feet of Warren Avenue for $20,000 now.
Yeah.
And who opened who brought that prosperity to Dearborn? You go look who owns all of the businesses on Warren Avenue.
I hope that our community members, they have a good interaction with neighbors, because there's so much ignorance even now. And there are a lot of people that they may not think about these points, about the presence, how blessing the presence of our community and their contribution to everything in the city. Some people may not appreciate that, and some people out of ignorance or racism may even be very critical. I'm not saying that we are perfect and we don't make any mistake or anything, but sometimes I can see some negativity from some neighbors.
True.
And
It still
I
exists.
know that we have to be more careful, maybe regarding the parking cars or traffic and so on and so forth. But the point is, if we are in good interaction with our neighbors and communicate with them, then if there is any misunderstanding or any miscommunication, we can remove that. So it's not that we contribute a lot and again be hated by some people. That is not fair.
In 1975, a family opened up a fruit market on Warren Avenue. And it was called Cedar Fruit Market. You had to get a permit from the city to put a sign over on your building if you had a business you were opening up. So the owner went to the city, got a permit to put the sign up. Cedar Fruit Market in big letters, and below it he had Cedar Fruit Market in Arabic, an Arabic script. People literally went berserk over that. I was a member of the PTA. When we call a PTA meeting, we would be lucky if we got 20 people to show up at the school. It was Laurie's school. Several influential members of that area of Dearborn asked to use the PTA's meeting room to call a meeting. And they invited the man in the city who issued the permits at the time. 300 people showed up at that meeting.
All the kids.
It was standing room
That
only,
much
and
space.
actually there were
All the
probably
buzz.
100 out in the hallway that couldn't get into the meeting. The man from the city had to have a police escort to get in and out of the meeting. They threatened to tar and feather that man for giving that store owner a permit to put a sign up in Arabic. That was the only problem. The sign was also in Arabic. You go up on Warren Avenue now on Saturday, half of the customers are non-Arabs in any of these businesses
it's
up there
different.
now.
It's good.
I mean,
In 1992, after I established the American Arab Chamber of Commerce, I came up with the idea of having Warren Avenue just like a Greek town, we call it the Arab town. And I talked to the state, and they donated, they said they can do, at that time, I know the governor, and he said, we'll do $50,000 toward that. And then I talked to the city, and the city gave us song and a dance, and maybe you will. What we wanted to do is change the facade of all the buildings to make it an Arabic architectural, and have the lights, and have street sidewalks, sitting outside this cafe. And we had a hard time with, it was, what was the name of the mayor? Mayor Guido.
Yeah, I know.
He because he came in, you can tell the story how he came in to become the mayor. And finally, he created a division between two Arabic organizations, and the project died. And this is something I feel sorry that we didn't accomplish that, because that would have been a center of Arab American businesses as it is now, but it would have been different style, would have been different. And I think it's still a viable project.
that was a good try, Hajj Nassib. And I remember when a group went to Guido and made the proposition to him, he kind of laughed at them. He told them, well, the next thing you'll do is ask me to put hay on the street to feed your camels.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Well, let's also hear, thank you, Ran, your contribution, and Hajj Fawaz. Hajj Adnan, as I said, you're a living legacy of our beloved late Imam, Imam Muhammad Jawad Chirri. And honestly, when I arrived in the Islamic Center, Imam is still alive because he passed away around 1994, right? So 2 years of, I had this really a gift of seeing him. He used to come many times to Friday prayer. And subhanallah, although he was going through that illness, but he did not forget Surah Al-Jum'ah. And sometimes, sometimes I had a problem that I was, reciting Surah Al-Jum'ah in Friday prayer, and he used to say it and a little bit loud. And then I said, Imam, after the salah, I said, Imam, when you say it like loudly, I get confused, so I may miss it. Honestly, even now, when I look at the books of Imam Chirri that he wrote it at that time, it looks like he wrote it yesterday. It's just so much advanced and a visionary man and a visionary leader, that the way that he answered the question about Islam and Muslims at that time, so clear, so strong, so convincing, that you cannot provide better answer even now, today. And the way that Hajj Nassib mentioned that really the way that he had a plan, he had an idea, and he was pushing to make sure that he can fulfill that. Really, we are celebrating the fruits of his vision even now, after 60 years and so of that time. And Hajj Nassib mentioned about, the book. There is one book that probably you are aware by Professor Sally Howell that wrote Old Islam in Detroit. And she had some interviews with some of the Hujjaj, like Mike Berry, Marhum Mike Berry, and Hajj Hussein, Hajj Sheikh Alawan, and some others. But really, we need to, as a matter of fact, on the front page of that book is a picture of Imam Chirri, that from Islamic Center, that he's leading the prayer. And there is only one line, not, one of the occasion that, it's a good reflection of the history of his life, how he came to this area, and challenges, and even outreach with interfaith, and talking on the radio, because we didn't have any of the things that technology of today, Facebook and Instagram and Telegram and all of this. And he used to have a weekly conversation with the radio, talking about Islam. Islamic focus. So please, you are the living document of that era. So please.
Maulana, thank you. A lot has been said with Hajj Nassib, and Brother Ron and yourself have stated a lot. It's true that we read history in schools to learn of the past.
Exactly.
And some people think history is not relevant, but a lot of people do, because it's always something you can always point to and say, here, on this date, on such a date, this incident, we can relate to it, or such a person may have done something, we can also relate to that person, whether good or bad, but it's something that we can either do better or do worse. In this case, we talk a lot about the founders of the Islamic Center of America. And, I've heard it, you guys just keep talking about the founders. If it weren't for the founders, and not because he was my dad, Imam Chirri, I think all of us may not even be sitting here. Very possible that we may not be sitting here. He was the pioneer, and and fortunately for him, a lot of a nucleus of good people, such as Hajj Nassib and Hajj Ran and Hajj Hussein. Hajj Hussein mortgaged his home to have the Islamic Center built. He took out a loan because Detroit Bank and Trust at that time would not give the Jama a loan while they were building it. He literally mortgaged his home and as collateral to get the loan. How many people will do that today?
Yeah.
Right.
So understanding, it's like us looking to our parents. That's how I look at it. If you don't learn from your parents and you don't follow from what your parents told you, you're not going to learn anything. So by us looking to the founders and learning what they did and learning how they expanded, and it wasn't just, okay, we built the Jama, okay, that was enough. The Jama was built and they expanded it. And then, as we were saying, in the 70s, it was the Jama that people looked to, like a beacon of hope for people that came to this country. It was a place where they could take their family, to teach them Islam. They could learn to pray. It was like being back home, but it was in the USA, exactly.
Right.
So that meant a lot to a lot of people, and that's why we had such a big influx in the city because of the Islamic Center of America. A lot of people don't know that, but it's such a driving instrument that the Islamic Center has played in our community, and these founders, we learn from them, and we can't forget. It's just like we want our kids to be looking at us and say, you know what? Yeah, our parents did the right thing because they learned lessons from those other people too. So it's I know, and I find it kind of unfortunate today, with the with the number of Islamic institutions we have in our community, such as yours, Maulana, IIA, Majma, Karbala, and a few other ones on the east side, and in Troy, and in Bloomfield, and Livonia. What gets me is that we have all these institutions, but as you mentioned before, the younger people will flock to some of these institutions, but unfortunately the majority are not going anywhere, especially today with the social media. Everyone pretends to be that they're very, very busy. They don't have time to go to the Jama for an hour or two. They don't have time to go and pray for Friday prayer. They don't have time to go to a Ramadan lecture or Ashura lecture or whatever the situation may be, or attend a fundraising dinner. Because we tell ourselves that, hey, we're just too busy for this. But unfortunately, that what I'm pointing to is a lot of these people that are, so to speak, mosqueless, they don't go anywhere, they're going to pay the price later on, because they're not taking their kids anywhere. They're thinking that they're raising their kids in the proper environment, a Muslim environment, but they're going to an American school all day. They're going to a college all day. They're dealing with Americans and other people, non-Muslims, all day long. So where are they going to learn the basics of Islam? It's
coronavirus made it even
well,
worse
that's
now.
that's even
I hope
worse.
when we get normal, they come back, but because it's very important what you are
That's
saying.
even worse. But we need to, and alhamdulillah, our community is so educated. Probably racial-wise, we're probably the smartest city, or a number of cities here, Dearborn Heights, and Livonia, and all this metro area. We're probably racial-wise more professionals in this area than anywhere else. In fact, when you watch CNN, there's one of the analysts, Van Jones. I'm not sure if you know him. Okay, African American, and I think at the time the discussion was about Muslims, and he was saying to his colleague next to him, he said, if a Muslim moved next to you, you should be so happy. He said, because First of all, crime level is super low. Education is super high. Modesty, morals, super high. You can't find a better neighbor than a Muslim, okay? And we need to learn to teach our kids all this stuff, okay? To be proud of being Muslims. And the only way that you can really be proud of that is to go and be amongst the Muslims in your area.
Van Jones has been to Dearborn, by the way.
Yeah, well, okay. I haven't seen him, but man, he's, telling the truth. The other thing is to be able to understand our history, understand your religion, and to address the Islamic anti-sentiment in the country. When someone speaks about Islam in a derogatory way, you need to be able to address it. Say, hey, wait a second here. It's not this way, it's not that way, it's not this way, but this is the way. So you need to, when someone says something wrong about Islam, you got to stop them and correct them. And where do you learn? Where do you learn to correct that? You learn it at the center. Right. Because you're hearing lectures every week and every week and every week. And especially now, you got white supremacy and you got all these groups, and you got, we don't know who's driving next to us one day, or walking next to us one day in the shopping mall, and what may happen next. And the other thing too I want to address, I'm not sure how much time we have, Maulana. One thing I really want to address, I've been voting since 1964, when I was 18 years old. Yes, I'm 74 years old. I have never missed an election, good or bad, because they always say, oh, who's the best of the two evils? Pick out the best of the two evils, okay? But get out there and vote. Because I will tell you that the last election in 16, probably in the extension of my family, I can probably name a dozen people that said, you know what? They're both no good, I'm not gonna vote. Get out there and vote. And the only way, like Hajj Nassib was saying, we need to let the politicians know who we are and that they need us. If we stay away and we don't vote for them and we don't help them, they're not going to know us. They're not going to come to our help when we need help, okay? So it's a two-way street always. So, do your duty as an American, as a person that you have the privilege and the right to vote, okay? I can't believe that people that have the right to vote, but they sit on the side and say, oh, you know what, it's not going to matter. And then when the wrong person's elected, oh God, look what he's doing, look what they're doing.
There's no excuse for not voting.
You were an instrument why that person is in office. But whoever you vote for, get out there and vote.
Right.
I want to add some point.
Right. Very good point.
It's excellent. When I was in the Middle East, I read an article in one of the newspapers there. It says that winning Michigan depends on how the Arab and Islamic votes will go.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's how it is. So if this is so important, then voting for us, even one vote, we should not waste.
Absolutely.
We should work together. Now, a second thing that we succeeded in the past is that we have worked together. Yes, we had some maybe differences, but we succeeded together because we work for the same cause. Now our community is a little bit spread, and like we said, is very busy with social media and other issues, but we're not yet working together the way it should be. It's very important that the younger generation get to know each other and work with each other, and then run for office and vote. Another issue is important. We realize that you have to donate some of your money to the politicians. If you don't give the politicians money, they're not going to listen to you.
Exactly.
It's so important that we had fundraisers after fundraisers, and I have one tomorrow and one yesterday, that for politicians, they want your money, they want your vote. So it's so important that we take care of this, we look at this. Look, we have so much money in this community, more than any average community. I remember the US Census last one, it says that the Arab American Muslim community has more degrees than any other community. We have more businesses than any other community. we make more money than any other community. We have more degrees in any other community. We have more students in university than any other community. It's time now, since the last census until now, it's time to bank on this and
Sure.
work on this. Younger leaders must come out and do this work and put people together. Our institutions have to work together. Cannot be separated. We cannot be working against each other. It's time that we create friends. We should have no enemies. We should have all friends.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Following up on that point about voting too, in 2016, the primary of 2016, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but Bernie Sanders beat
Here in
Hillary
Dearborn.
Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
He, in the state, he beat, statewide, he beat Hillary Clinton. CNN reported he beat Hillary Clinton because of the Arab American vote in metropolitan Detroit. So
Absolutely.
we throw a lot more weight around than we think we do.
Exactly.
Especially now that you can vote by even mail. I mean, you
Yeah.
can
Yeah,
vote
yeah.
by person,
Yeah.
and if you don't want to go in person, you can vote by mail.
Yeah.
But do it now before.
Absolutely.
Before I'm
So
happy
important.
that you mentioned Hajj Adnan and appreciate your points about it is really a wajib. It is a political obligation, a social obligation, and even a moral obligation. I mean, recently we witnessed how the presidential debates. I mean, so much, arrogance, ignorance, like racism involved. Exclusion, selfishness, and who is really responsible to remove the ignorance, to remove this racism that you mentioned, like from long time ago. The answer comes through what Hajj Nassib said, if you work together.
Gotta get involved.
There is an expression, they say that if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, go together.
Together.
And we have a far way to go, and we need to cooperate.
Very
One
good.
good news is that recently Hajj, an initiative from House of Wisdom, and I talked with other imams of our centers in Dearborn and Dearborn Heights, the imams who represent the center, because we have so many mu'ammamin, of course, but we said let us start with the imams who work with the centers, with the Islamic Center, Majma, Institute, other centers that we have. And we invited all the imams for the first time. We had this in long time ago, that 20 years ago, but then things changed. We didn't have really like an association or gatherings of imam at least once a month. But recently we started this. Recently we started this, and majority of the imams who represent the centers and they work with the centers, we met here for the first time, and then the second time we met in Sayyid Najas Mosque, and we continue to come to Islamic Center and Mahad and others. And that was really a good initiative, because in Ramadan, we have the same Fajr and the same Ghurub, but if you look at the calendar, sometimes the centers, like they're 40 minutes different in the Imsak and Iftar. And we said, this is not really acceptable. We need to get together and put the information together and produce the same calendar, the same Awqat al-Salat.
Yeah.
And if we cannot cover Eid, because Eid sometimes out of our control, but at least the thing that we can do, we should do. And I appreciate this cooperation, that unity. We really need to, especially this racism that still exists, the ignorance that still exists. Then it is the responsibility of the youth, the young generation, because our generations, well, we did our best. Now this is your turn, and this is your time.
Yeah.
Number one, vote. And secondly, your outreach. As Hajj Adnan mentioned, let people know that we as Muslim community, We are for peace. We are for love. This is what we learn from our religion. Islam is about love. It is about compassion. It is about peace. It is about justice. And we have to not only say that, we have to lead by example. Let the non-Muslims know and notice that we represent the values, the religion, and stand for these principles.
And in that regard, Maulana, there's no other imam that I can think of that has done more for outreach
Yeah,
than
then
Imam Elahi.
Yeah, Imam Elahi, you. If there was an Oscar to be given for interfaith, it would be yours.
Thank you. You know, because our time is limited in this world, Hajj. I mean, the life is so short, life is so shaky, and every day is really a gift. And we need to take advantage of every moment that we have to do this outreach. As the previous generations, they did their job, and this is now our time. And I hope that those who watch this program and listen to these credible characters from our community remember their responsibility of outreach, of dialogue with their interfaith, starting in our families and raising our kids with this kind of values. Then they can carry these values to the society. Then our politicians, coming from the same family, then they carry honesty and decency and truthfulness and trust. So hopefully we can say to our Lord that we did our best. You know, we did our best. Even if you couldn't change the world, but at least we said it. We did our best, right? I mean, at least, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other final word from anybody?
Thank you for having us.
Go and vote.
So let us pray for those people that we mentioned their name, Imam Chirri, and Hajj, you mentioned Sheikh Khalil Bazzi, and other imams and other leaders, community members. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات وتابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك على كل شيء قدير برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآله. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is Imam Muhammad Ali Elahi of Islamic House of Wisdom in Michigan. Our mosque is joining this National Interfaith Mourning Project because regardless of our religious, racial, or cultural similarities or differences, humanity is our common identity. At this testing time, that millions of our fellow humans are either dead or damaged by this deadly disease, we are gathering to sincerely mourn our losses and express our prayer, support, and solidarity for sisters and brothers who are suffering from this terrible tragedy. Let us hope that the Corona call makes us more united, more humble, more compassionate, to work together for a healthy, happy, and peaceful future for all. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you.